Good evening, my name's Humphreys and I do apologise, I've got a stinking cold, so if I need to blow my nose, don't worry about it. Anyway, we're here this evening to watch The Evil Dead 2, which was subtitled Dead by Dawn. I'm doing this for, I believe, the second birthday of the Carlisle Cult Cinema Club, and thank you to Paul Donaldson for giving me this chance to say hello. So what I wanted to do is just very quickly show you this, which was the poster originally created for Palace Pictures to promote the release of Evil Dead 2. I don't have the original artwork for this anymore, it's the print. However, what I do have is that's the original painting for The Evil Dead. This was painted in the winter of 1982 for the early 1983 release. Evil Dead 2 came out about 2 years later, so this is going way back in time for me. I was working from a studio in Brixton at the time, living quite nearby there as well, and the poses, for instance this one here, and I think maybe the hand there, the hands down here, those were all referenced from Polaroids which I took of some of the colleagues working in the same studio. The basic structure is kind of a bit like the original Evil Dead painting, in as much that whereas we have the reels as the focal point from which everything else emanates, with Evil Dead 2, the Book of the Dead became the pivot for the whole illustration. I do remember at the time just wanting to make it as colourful as possible, because the film itself is quite lurid, and I think there's an attempt by Sam Raimi to emulate some of the colours that had appeared in the sort of 1960s Hammer films from Britain. There was definitely an influence there. For myself, it was just a great job to do, and I was given a lot of freedom by Palace Pictures at the time, and we had, much like the original Evil Dead, were obliged to do two versions, one which was the quad format, and then a second version for the VHS format, VHS being an essential part of their marketing campaign. Evil Dead, some of you may know, was released simultaneously at the cinemas and on VHS, which meant that it lessened the chance of any piracy, but also, given they weren't too sure of the reception for the film, they knew at least the VHS market would be a pretty good one for them, and well, as it turned out, both did very well, the cinema versions and the VHS versions. So Palace continued throughout the 80s to produce quite a lot of VHS horror outputs, and I was very lucky enough to have done a number of those covers for them. Basket Case, Creepers, for instance, Nightmare on Elm Street, 2 and 3 and 4. So yeah, it's been quite a sort of a heady little era. That 80s period, I mean, I probably owes as much to the politics of the time as well. We were living under sort of a Thatcher-Reagan era, and in many ways we kind of return to that now, so I think it's quite timely that we go back to the 1980s and look at the horror films of that era, because you know, we're certainly seeing a resurgence of horror here right now, which is in no small part down to the politics of the time. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the film. If you haven't seen it before, well, very naughty you. If you have, and I'm sure you've seen it more than once, then you're going to enjoy it once more. So have a great evening. Cheers.